Hello and welcome to another episode of Snakes Territory. I am Jesse Friedman alongside Jack Sommers. And we made it, Jack. The trade deadline has officially come and gone. The Diamondbacks made one big trade and one interesting trade that we'll get into a little bit later in the show. But of course, the big one, Jack, is the Diamondbacks sending right-handed pitcher Merrill Kelly to the Texas Rangers in exchange for 3 pitching prospects. The Diamondbacks get left-hander Kohl Drake, left-hander Mitch Bratt, and right-hander David Hagaman. Jack, we talked about it on the show yesterday that the Diamondbacks really needed to try to get some young pitching with whatever moves they made here on deadline day, and they were able to do that in this deal.
Yeah, they got some decent pitching. I think that, we have a fair amount of information on these guys that we can probably share. I think most of our listeners know a lot of it. But the main point is they picked up 3 starting pitchers that were all ranked within the top, 15, 20 of the Rangers system. And so that's pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, this is kind of a funny fit here, Jack, in that Merrill Kelly's shining moment of his career with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Of course, there were many good moments along the way, but in my view, none greater than Merrill throwing an absolute gem in Game 2 of the World Series against the Texas Rangers. It was 7 innings. It was 9 strikeouts. Really, really impressive. A fun time for the whole world to really see what Merrill Kelly can do on that sort of stage. So a bit of a funny fit here with Merrill joining the same team that he beat. Of course, that was the only game the Diamondbacks managed to win during that 2023 World Series. But yeah, talking about the return here, Jack, we're certainly going to get to know these guys more in the coming days as we're able to sit down and think about all of them a little bit more and get some more information. But all 3 of these guys are real pitching prospects. They all are starting pitchers as of right now, and I think all 3 of them have a legitimate chance to stay in a big league rotation, to be in a big league rotation at some point down the road. Hagaman is down in Single A right now, but Kohl Drake was promoted up to Triple A recently, and then Mitch Bratt has pitched his entire season in Double A, probably could be promoted at some point in the near future here. So these are guys who have a shot to play a big role in a big league rotation, and at least with 2 of them, they're not all that far away.
Yeah, I think Drake is probably pretty close. I mean, I could see him pitching in the major leagues next year at some point. And I think he's got some pretty good stuff. He throws in like 93, 94 mile an hour sinker, 4-seamer. He's got a repertoire. He can mix and match a few different pitches. You guys know by now, I want a guy that, unless you're throwing 98 mile an hour smoke, on average, I need a guy that gives me a repertoire. So he has that. I think Hagaman's got some really good stuff, so that's intriguing. With Bratt, it's probably more of like a finesse lefty, kind of deception look, and probably some a little bit more reliever risk there.
Yeah, and that's a real thing with all 3 of these guys. I think if you're envisioning a few years from now, Kohl Drake, Mitch Bratt, and David Hagaman all being in the Diamondbacks starting rotation, I don't know if that's going to happen. These are solid pitching prospects, but you don't necessarily expect to have a 100% hit rate in this regard. So we'll see what the development looks like. Certainly Hagaman is still a little ways away, but these are all guys, Jack, who have good numbers in the minors, which is something that you certainly love to see. Sometimes you acquire a pitching prospect and teams are trying to tell you that the stuff is really great or whatever, and you look at the guy's numbers and they have a 5.5 ERA in Double A or whatever, and you're kind of trying to figure out how it's all going to fit together someday. All 3 of these guys have good numbers in the minor leagues. Kohl Drake this season has pitched in 16 games, 15 starts with Double-A and Triple-A. He is now at Triple-A. When he was with Double-A, he had a 2.44 ERA in 12 starts. Impressive peripherals, 70 strikeouts to 22 walks, a whip under 1, an opponent batting average of 164. And I know the numbers in Triple-A haven't been quite as good. He has a 5.19 ERA there, but it's just 17 in the third inning. So he's still kind of getting his feet wet at that level. And then you continue down the line here, Jack. Mitch Bratt has a 3.18 ERA in 18 games, 17 starts in Double-A. Really, really good peripherals there. 106 strikeouts to just 16 walks. Certainly love to see that at the Double-A level. And then David Hagaman, there's not a whole lot of innings here to speak of, but he's made 8 starts this year. He was a fourth round pick for the Rangers last season. And in those 8 starts, 3 of them came in rookie ball, 5 of them came in Single-A. He was promoted here recently. And it's not a lot of innings, Jack. We're talking about 22 minor league innings here for Hagaman, but it's a 2.82 ERA overall, including a 3.52 mark since that promotion to Single-A. So across the board, all of these guys are trending well. They all seem to be kind of checking the boxes that you would like to see. None of these guys are top 100s, so I'm not going to sit here and say that, we think really any of these guys necessarily are going to be fronting a Diamondbacks rotation here in the next year or two. But there's a whole lot of value, Jack, even in just a mid-rotation starter. And if the Diamondbacks could get, 1 or 2 of those out of this trade, it could be a really big win for them.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a reality check for me. I mean, I've been saying all along that I felt that Merrill Kelly had the highest trade value of any player that they were likely to trade. Pipeline has Drake 5, Bratt 9, Hagaman 13. Baseball America is a little bit behind that on all 3 of them. So I think it's, important to mention that they have Drake 9, Bratt 14, and Hagaman 16. So, there's some difference there. Usually it's kind of funny. Pipeline and BA, they seem to kind of come a little closer together. So it's interesting that they're about a difference of about 4 slots on all 3 players. And pitching prospects are designed to break your heart. That's the rule, right? I mean, they're just absolutely soul-crushing, disappointment when you latch on a guy and you love a prospect. You just a guy that you're tracking that you're sure is going to be good. When they don't make it or if they get hurt, it's tough. So, that's always going to be something that we're going to go through in this industry. But at the end of the day, they got 3 legitimate pitching prospects, like you say. Going to miss seeing Merrill pitch. I mean, of all the pitchers that we've had here since Zac Gallen, he was the most enjoyable for me to watch. I mean, I think that almost everybody will echo that. I mean, sure, when Zac had his run, that was cool too, because he was throwing strikes with 4 different pitches and dominating guys. And that was pretty neat for a year. But Merrill's been doing it for, 4+ years, 5 years at this level. And it was just so consistent. I mean, and on the days that he had his better stuff, he was, really difficult to deal with. So I'm going to miss seeing Merrill pitch every 5th day, and I'm going to miss getting to go and talk with him and chat with him. But hopefully, all of that talk about Merrill coming back will come to fruition. Of course, they always say that, but then when the bidding war starts, all those comments about I'd love to be back here and would love to have him back kind of go by the wayside.
We'll take some time later in the show to just think back to some of the fine moments of Merrill Kelly's career, because he absolutely deserves his flowers. He's, I think, one of the best pitchers in Diamondbacks history. I know he's not up there with Randy Johnson or Curt Schilling or whatnot, but he's been around here for a good while at this point, and he's been productive, especially over the past 4 seasons. He's been one of the most consistent starting pitchers in all of baseball. So we'll take some time later in the show for sure to reflect on what Merrill Kelly has meant to this Diamondbacks organization over the course of his tenure. And yeah, maybe this isn't the end. Maybe there is a path for Merrill to return to the Diamondbacks at some point soon. As far as the big question here, Jack, which I guess is, of course, did the D-backs get enough? Did they do well in this trade when all was said and done? I guess we have to revert back to our favorite answer to these sorts of questions, which is I don't know. I feel like that will be my legitimate answer to this question for probably a couple of years at least, until we really get a feel for what these young pitchers could maybe bring to the organization. But on the other hand, there is something to be said for just getting good value for a player, whether the prospects you acquire pan out or not. On paper, did you get the kind of value that you would expect to from Merrill Kelly? And I think the D-backs did pretty well here, Jack. I wouldn't say I'm blown away by the package. Again, there isn't a top 100 guy among this group, but it's 3 legitimate pitching prospects that I think are all fairly promising.
Yeah, there was a video rolling around about just in the run up to the trade deadline, and I thought it was really insightful because that's kind of the sense that I've always had with this baseball operations group, which is, they're not obsessed with a ranking, and they're not obsessed with just fishing around to make the best deals. They're trying to find the best players, and so they're targeting guys that they think are good players to them. And I think that's a pretty reasonable approach to take. Now, we can talk about track record. I mean, it's, the Diamondbacks' track record with developing in-house pitching has not been good. All right. There's just no other way to put that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Some of that's luck, but not all of it. And I've written and talked about many times that they do need to kind of rework and overhaul their system. I don't know, maybe bringing in a Six Sigma expert, something to, kind of overhaul their whole methodology of evaluation of their training methods for their pitchers. So, time will tell, but there's probably going to be, I think a lot of the skepticism about the pitchers is, they could be good, but so what? The Diamondbacks won't be able to develop them. And that's a legitimate concern. I mean, it sounds snarky and kind of negative, but, there's some track record there. So we have to acknowledge that. But, look, all you can do is the best you can do on the day that you're doing it. And I think that they did a good job here.
I think there's also a difference between someone like Kohl Drake, who was just promoted to AAA and is 25 years old and maybe could get a shot in the majors down the stretch. I'm not necessarily expecting it, but I think it's possible. There's a difference between someone like that and someone like David Hagaman, who clearly has, multiple years left in his development. If you're the Diamondbacks, there just isn't nearly as much that you have to teach someone like Kohl Drake than there is someone who's at the lower levels of the farm system. So I think there's just a difference there. There's a difference between drafting a pitcher and developing them all the way through the process, as opposed to picking up a pretty good pitching prospect from another organization who's already in AA or AAA and just trying to get them across the finish line. We don't have a ton of, I feel like we don't have a ton of past examples with this, Jack. I mean, what other, legitimate, solid pitching prospects have the Diamondbacks acquired under Mike Hazen who were at the AA or AAA level and had some sort of prospect pedigree? It doesn't feel like there's all that many, because we haven't seen the Diamondbacks really sell all that much. And when they have sold in past years, they haven't really had the most enticing pieces to offer.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, they never really, that I can remember in recent history, had this many, good rental. But at the same time, here we are just facing the reality of, what is 2 months of production worth?
Yeah.
In a season that you essentially have almost no chance to make the postseason.
And I guess
it's kind of like, it's better than nothing. And I hate to use that phrase. I just want to smack myself for using it. But it's kind of almost like that, right? The only thing is, what are other, I think you just got to compare, like, what did other teams get for rentals? If you want to evaluate the returns that Mike Hazen got, we'd have to really go back and study all the rental players that were moved and what were the best returns, who were the best players that were pure rentals, and then see how Mike stacked up in his ability to extract value.
The other way to evaluate the trade, of course, is what we've gone back to a whole bunch of times, which is, did the Diamondbacks clear the compensatory draft pick that they could have gotten for just keeping Merrill Kelly and giving him the qualifying offer? I know Kelly's in a bit of a different class with that than someone like Eugenio Suárez. You certainly expect him to get paid in the offseason, but because he's 36 years old, does he get $50 million or more in order to make that draft pick after the first round instead of after the second round? I think he probably would. You don't necessarily know for sure. But assuming he does get $50 million or more, Jack, and the Diamondbacks could have given him a qualifying offer and could have recouped a draft pick after the first round next year, I feel pretty good in this case that the return that they got would exceed the value of that pick on paper.
Well, clearly they believe that's the case, right? I mean, Mike
Yeah.
said previously that, qualifying offers were a factor. So, they believe that they cleared that bar. The question is, did they, in the eyes of the rest of the industry, or in the eyes of us pundits and fans watching? But really, the only opinion that mattered was Mike and his baseball operations team, and they clearly felt they cleared that bar.
Well, we have a whole lot more to get to with this trade, as well as the other trade the Diamondbacks made. Didn't have Jordan Montgomery on the trade block on my bingo card exactly, Jack, but we're going to talk about that deal, more with the Merrill Kelly deal, and a whole lot more right after this break.
Do you have the best VPN in the game? Are you saving enough on your VPN? You got to check out surfshark.com/Val or use the code FOUL at checkout on the site to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. There's a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee at surfshark.com/Val. Kratz, if you're on the go a lot, you got to check out Surfshark.
It's a no-brainer. I'm at the beach, so I should know something about a surf shark. Just saying. Get it done. 30 days.
That's right. Secure your digital life with Surfshark VPN. You can hit the link below for 4 extra months of Surfshark, either on the podcast page or on the YouTube channel. Don't let online threats catch you off guard. This has been your tech update. You want to keep your data safe and make sure you check out Surfshark today. It's a 30-day money-back guarantee. You can secure your digital world right now.
Well, Jack, the Diamondbacks did not only trade Merrill Kelly on before the trade deadline, they also made another move as well, which didn't come out until minutes after the deadline had passed. It's always it's a good reminder to keep looking at your phone even after the deadline is technically passed. A lot of times the all of the news doesn't break until a few minutes after that, and it's a bizarre trade, Jack. I'm not gonna lie. The Diamondbacks traded Shelby Miller, who has been a very good relief pitcher for them this season, but is currently on the injured list. We think he's theoretically should be back and available fairly soon. They traded Miller and Jordan Montgomery, who had Tommy John surgery back in March and is certainly not going to be available this season. They traded those guys to the Milwaukee Brewers, and they got nothing in return. It is what sounds like a complete sort of salary dump here situation here for the D-backs, where they are able to save some money and move on from those guys.
Yeah, Gambo reported on air that the savings was $3 million in this deal. And we know that Shelby Miller is making $1 million. So, I'm sure everyone else can do the math there and figure out what kind of relief that they were able to get. So essentially this was purely, okay, here's Shelby Miller. I need to save X amount of money.
Yeah. And that is definitely a real thing for the Diamondbacks at the deadline. We know that Mike Hazen said several days ago that the D-backs were not making moves, just to try to save money. That was not ever going to be the primary reason that they traded a Eugenio Suárez or a Josh Naylor or whatnot. But the cost savings for the D-backs is pretty significant here, Jack. We talked about the Randall Grichuk deal where they saved almost $4 million. They saved close to that with Josh Naylor as well. And I think if you total it all up, it's in the neighborhood of $20 million. I think Gambo just tweeted out 18. It sounds like, at least according to what Gambo said, it sounds like that's money the D-backs will use to reinvest into the team next year. And if that happens, I mean, that's significant. If the D-backs have $20 more million to spend on their 2026 roster, that could go a long way for them.
Yeah. By the way, I think a while back you and I had presented a little table here on the show of what the savings could potentially be if they ended up selling. And I think that's right around the number that we came to. That included Zach, but didn't include, dumping however much they were able to dump of Jordan Montgomery's salary. So kind of pretty close to that number. And again, if all of that money saved this year is rolling over to increase what they can spend next year.
Yeah.
And I just want to put a fine point on these numbers. Okay, this year, before these moves, the payroll was going to be in between 190 to 195 million, depending on your source. Okay, and so of course they stripped away players. Free agents are coming off the books 75 million, but there are other escalating contracts, and I had calculated that they're going to be in for about 140 plus million. So I figured that they have about 50 million actual buffer by the time you take away the money off the books, then account for increased arb costs and other escalating guaranteed contracts where they go up $1 million here, $2 million there. Sooner or later, you're talking about real money. It actually worked out to about 143 million. So if they're keeping the payroll at 193, then that means they got 50 to spend to fill their holes. So does this 18 million then roll over into next year on paper internally? And does now Mike have the ability to go up to 210 or 215 million? Is Ken Kendrick increasing payroll? Time will tell. Right? We'll hear lots of things about that, but we won't know until March of next year when we add it all up.
That's a really big factor in this whole equation for sure. And the other thing I think about there, Jack, is I imagine that the D-backs attendance the rest of this 2025 season might take a bit of a hit. I imagine that whatever projections they had in that regard for the next 2 months, they're probably going to fall short of that. You're not going to have these big, weekend games in September where the whole season is on the line. Most likely the D-backs are going to be playing fairly irrelevant baseball the rest of the way, at least in terms of the postseason. So, maybe a portion of the money that they save kind of goes to cover those losses, and what's left over goes into the payroll for next season. I don't know that. That's not me reporting that. It's just maybe some speculation. I could understand if the Diamondbacks allocated the money in that way. Yeah.
And no, by the way, they're going on like a 9-game winning streak starting this weekend, and they're going to get right back in the race and shock the world.
Who knows, Jack? We've said it before. The moment you think the D-backs are out of the race, they find a way to make it interesting again. It feels like that ship has sailed maybe here in the last week or so, but you never put it past this baseball team. Anything's possible. The other thing that really stands out to me, Jack, about what happened for this team here on Thursday is not as much what they did do, but what they didn't do. The fact that right-hander Zac Gallen is still on the roster, is going to finish out the season with this baseball team. We expect the D-backs will probably give him the qualifying offer in the offseason and look to get that draft pick compensation going into next year. What are your initial thoughts, Jack, on Gallen remaining a Diamondback?
It's absolutely stunning that Zac Gallen is still a Diamondback. I mean, if you'd have asked me back, 3 months ago, 4 months ago, would a healthy Zac Gallen on the trade block not be movable?
Yeah.
For more than the value of the qualifying offer. Nobody could imagine that. Nobody predicted that. Even though anybody that was even kind of down on the season that he had last year, and I was in that boat, could not have imagined things going as badly as they have this year, to the point where his value is less than the qualifying offer. I mean, that's just stunning. It's an absolutely stunning development that we really haven't fully wrapped our brains around yet. Even watching it every day, we still haven't gotten there.
It's going to take a while for the dust to settle and us to really reflect on everything that's gone down here in the last couple of days. Yeah, I am surprised by this too. I figured that even though the D-backs were setting, there was a bar to clear here. That was made very clear by the Diamondbacks front office. You had to clear what the team thought they were going to get from that draft pick in order for this deal to be worthwhile for them. It totally makes sense. But you just figured that the pedigree was going to carry his value a little bit. That yes, Zac Gallen does have an ERA, well over 5, but he also was one of the best pitchers in baseball not all that long ago. I know it's been a couple of years. We've talked about it on the show a lot, that the regression for Gallen is not just a 2025 story, it's a 2024 story and maybe an end of 2023 story as well. But I figured, Jack, that teams would read into that more, that they would look at the fact that Gallen's, at least his fastball velocity is not all that different from where it was a couple of years ago. And you still have the makings here of a pretty good starting pitcher. Apparently, that just wasn't the case. Teams just were not buying that, at least not to the degree that was needed to make this trade happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, like you said, we have talked about it. The last show or two ago, or I brought up the numbers: 70-something starts, a 4.38 ERA. It's more than 2.5 years worth of starts with a 4.38 ERA. So clearly, the industry caught up to the current reality of Zac Gallen.
Yeah,
some might not have, including this front office and the manager and some of the fans, but the rest of the industry caught up to the reality of Zac Gallen.
These moves are now official. The Diamondbacks have released a press release for both of the trades that have happened today, and we spoke with D-backs GM Mike Hazen about these moves here just before hopping on the air. And there was some interesting stuff in there, Jack. I think one of the things that stood out to me was that Mike Hazen was also a little surprised that Zac Gallen is still a member of this team. He said that there were a few teams leading up to the deadline who dropped out and became sellers, teams that maybe could have been suitors for one of the rental starting pitchers that decided to sell anyway. San Francisco Giants certainly come to mind there as a team that certainly sold. They traded Tyler Rogers, they traded Camilo Duvall, they traded Mike Yastrzemski in the final moments leading up to the deadline. And so I guess the market shifted a little bit, Jack, where the demand for starting pitching was a little bit less, and Zac Gallen understandably wasn't going to be at the top of the list for some of those teams that still were in on the market.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he was a little bit surprised that that's the way it went down. He did not expect that. As I just said, it took him a while to catch up to the reality of how Zac is viewed in the market. Now they know. I hate to say I told you so on this one, but I kind of did. And it's not the first time. By the way, there's a question about who's going to fill the rotation spot. That's going to be Anthony DeSclafani.
Yes.
Mike said.
Yeah.
Were
you going to add something else?
No, you go ahead.
So another storyline that I think really came out and kind of developed over the course of the day was the D-backs return for Eugenio Suárez, and the fact that, we talked about it yesterday. Tyler Locklear is an interesting player. I don't think the D-backs, embarrassed themselves by any means in that trade, but it was also clear that it wasn't the level of return that the team was looking for. We had heard a report about 2 top 100 prospects being the ask for Eugenio Suárez, and obviously the D-backs didn't really get anything close to that. They got Tyler Locklear, who's maybe close to the top 100, but definitely outside it, and then a couple of relief pitcher prospects behind him. So they fell well short of what they were originally looking for there, Jack. And our friend Nick Picoro over at the Arizona Republic published a story earlier today with some information about how Suárez was perceived around the league. And it seems pretty clear to me, Jack, that the perception of the Suárez market did not at all match the reality behind the scenes.
Yeah, and I love to say I told you so, and sometimes I don't like to say I told you so because not under happy circumstances. But I try to tell everybody that the perception of Suárez going forward and all that mattered was what happens going forward and how other teams are going to perceive his future going forward. I want to read this section from Nick's article. The Milwaukee Brewers and Detroit Tigers, 2 clubs that conceivably could have been fits for Suárez, barely dipped their toes in the water, sources said. Both clubs apparently saw Suárez as an imperfect fit and or a minimal upgrade relative to what they already had, particularly when factoring in Suárez's age and average at best defense at third base. It was our opinion that he was roughly a league average third baseman, one rival source said. Would guess a lot of the industry agreed he's much more likely to perform more at his career level moving forward rather than the player he has been over the past year plus. And that's what I've been trying to say, guys. And that's what the projection said. And yes, he might beat those projections. Now, we're going to have a little interesting discussion later about the possibilities for Geno Suárez up in Seattle and what might happen there. But look, I'm not going to sell the guy short. He's had a terrific season, but I was concerned all along that the rest of the industry would not perceive him quite the way some of the media did. I think the Athletic article putting him number one as the number one trade chip. I was so frustrated to see that because I felt like it set up so many false expectations or set expectations much too high.
At the same time, I mean, I think him being number one was not all about what Geno has done this year. It was also, frankly, about how there just weren't a ton of top bats available at this year's trade deadline. So you figured maybe teams would sort of pay a premium for Suárez because relative to what else was out there, it did seem like he was one of the top guys available. I guess as things turned out, Jack, I mean, the Padres traded for Ramon Laureano of the Baltimore Orioles, along with the rest of the league, apparently, as in the Padres traded for everyone else in the league as well. They had a pretty eventful 24 hours here, to say the least. But Ramon Laureano, for example, he has, I think, a 137 OPS plus this year, I want to say. And of course, there's team control beyond this season. So you definitely expect someone like Laureano to exceed Eugenio Suárez in terms of what it would take to acquire him. But yeah, he has a 145 OPS plus this season. I don't think it's necessarily a given that Geno was the best bat moved at this year's trade deadline.
Yeah, that's another way to put it. I mean, look, if he continues, if he pulls out of the slump that he was in and he's rejuvenated, getting an pennant race, I want nothing more than to see that guy just go off. I mean, we all want to see that. And it could happen. I mean, I'm not ruling out that possibility by any means. I'm just not treating it as a certainty that many people seem to be doing.
Yeah, that's very well said. It's not that it's impossible for Suárez to continue what he's already been doing this season. It's just to what extent were teams going to buy into that being the expectation? Like, to what extent do you believe in this last calendar year that Suárez has put together as truly what he's going to be moving forward? Obviously, the D-backs had something different in their minds than what the rest of the league thought.
Yeah. Mike had some things to say about third base going forward and Jordan Lawler. So Lawler is getting close. He's rehabbing right now, and he's probably getting fairly close to being able to get into some games up in Reno. I don't know if that's another week away or 2 weeks away, but he's moving in that direction. And then once he's ready, it sure sounded like he's going to get called up and get some run at third base. However, Mike made sure that he pointed out that Tim Tower might get a few reps at third base going forward, and of course Blaze Alexander, which is pretty much what we've been saying. I figured last time we spoke, I said that I didn't expect Lawler up before the September 1 call-ups, but after hearing Mike Hazen today, it sounds closer. So I'll move that up to 8:15 as my speculative guess.
It seems almost inevitable. We're going to see Jordan Lawler in the big leagues at some point down the stretch. He's one of a number of players a number of young players that the D-backs will likely be trying out in these final 2 months of the season just to see what they have going into next year. Certainly Tyler Locklear will be a member of that group as well. As it sounds, Jack, like Tyler Locklear is going to be the D-backs first baseman. I know Gambo reported earlier today that he expects Tristan English to be optioned down to Reno. It looks like Locklear is going to get every opportunity to try to earn that spot. And of course, going into 2026, there are some questions on that front as to what the D-backs are going to do at first base. Locklear has an opportunity here to really cement himself in that picture.
Yeah, I mean, Pavin Smith will probably get some reps at first base as well. I don't think Locklear is going to play all 60 games. I would guess he's probably going to play 45 of them, though. And we should get close to 200 at-bats, or plate appearances. And the team really needs that. They need to evaluate that very, very well to find out, is this my guy for next year? It was funny. Mike was asked, I think, is Locklear the guy for 2026? And he didn't just, say, yeah, it's his job going forward. I mean, the young man has to go out and prove it right now and go ahead and take the job. So it's going to be fun and interesting. I mean, look, I realize that everybody wants to see winning baseball, but we're at that stage where, we really need to focus in on, are the players progressing? Are they making adjustments? Are they able to figure some things out? And there's always some growing pains with that. So it takes a kind of fortitude as a fan to really hang with these guys and watch them develop.
That's another thing Mike Hazen was asked about during the press conference was, what do you want to see from this team going forward? And he very quickly said competitive. He wanted to see his team go out there and compete, which is, granted, sort of a cliche word in this world, but you can understand where Hazen is coming from there. The Diamondbacks have frankly not been competitive for about 2 weeks now, and he acknowledged that the trade deadline can be a bit of a distraction, but he was like, well, the trade deadline is over now, and it's time for us to turn the page and play hard the rest of the season and do the best, try to get everything out of these last 2 months of the year that you possibly can. Looking at this roster, Jack, you're not expecting to win a ton of games. I mean, I think finishing the year with 74, 75 wins feels pretty possible to me, especially given how much things have fallen off in the past few days. But at the very least, you want to see the team focused on a day-to-day basis, and you want to see some of these young guys step up with the opportunities they have.
Yeah. By the way, I did look up Fangraph's projection for the rest of the season, had the D-backs right at about 77 wins. You peel away Merrill, that drops 1 to 2 wins right there, and Shelby as well. So, they're probably going to wake up tomorrow morning to a projection of 75, 75.5, something like that. I don't think it'll be over 76. So that's the projection for the rest of the season. So that means they win 25 of their remaining games.
It seems pretty possible. As bad as that sounds, I think it's very possible. Mike was also asked about the third base situation moving forward. We kind of touched on this, but yeah, Jordan Lawler figures to be a factor there at some point once he's fully healthy. And then Tim Tawa, Ildemaro Vargas, Blaze Alexander, all names that Hazen mentioned there as well. Outside of that, Jack, Mike also talked about being engaged on the buy side of the market and trying to be a player for, maybe one of those relief pitchers who had some control left. We heard from him earlier that was something he was interested in doing. This wasn't all about selling for the D-backs. They're still looking to be competitive the next couple of years. And Mike said that he was relatively close a time or two on bullpen guys. Of course, didn't get into specifics with names or anything. He also noted that controllable players were infinitely more expensive than rentals, which tracks.
Sure, absolutely. I think he also talked about, the difficulty of facing the reality of where the team was at, and how disappointed he was in how the team has played. Right. But face the reality was the phrase that, stuck out to me. I think that they really did want to buy. I think they pushed that for as long and as hard as they possibly could. I think, even up until that sweep of the Cardinals, I think that they thought, okay, let's see how this goes. So being swept by the Astros seemed to seal it like, okay, no, it's just not happening. I think they already decided pretty much before the Pirates series what they were going to do.
Well, on a positive note, a sort of reflective note, it is time for our DraftKings player spotlight. And who else would we spotlight, Jack, on a day like this than the one and only Merrill Kelly, who joins the Texas Rangers, a team that is very much in the thick of the postseason race in the American League. As I mentioned earlier, the Rangers know as well as any team out there that Merrill Kelly absolutely can pitch in the biggest moments in October. He excelled at that back in 2023. But I think we should take a moment here, Jack, just to reflect on what Merrill Kelly has meant to the organization. Obviously, a local guy, went to high school in Scottsdale, I think, and went to ASU, of course. It's been a lot of fun watching him here over the last 7 years, I guess it is, going all the way back to 2019.
Yeah, and if he gets back into postseason, I mean, watch out for the Rangers, right? I mean, you put DeGrom and Eovaldi, those guys, even a resurgent Patrick Corbin. I mean, that's a really interesting rotation now. And you stick Merrill Kelly in there with his steadiness and ability to get them deep into games. Give him at least 5-6 innings in a postseason game. All of a sudden, the Rangers and Bruce Bochy, I mean, that's a team that could just jump right back up and find themselves, in the pennant again, winning the pennant again. So great landing spot for Merrill Kelly. I think he's going to like it there. I think he's going to like playing for Bruce Bochy. And, I hope I'm a Texas Ranger fan and a Seattle Mariner fan now. We want to see these guys do good. I'd like, that would be awesome to see both these teams make the postseason. They're both from the NL West, so it's going to be hard because, there's only so many wild card spots, and Houston's probably going to win the West, especially with what they just did.
I might be remembering this wrong, Jack, but I'm pretty sure that the Mariners play the Rangers this weekend. And I think Merrill Kelly would probably start one of those games. I mean, unless they're planning to really push him back a ways and give him some extra time, there's a pretty real chance that Merrill Kelly faces Josh Naylor and Eugenio Suárez this weekend in Seattle. So that would be pretty funny. Certainly be keeping an eye out for that. But thinking about Merrill as a whole, Jack, I mean, what an unbelievable season this has been for him. The pressure of a walk year and obviously coming off a big injury a season ago. He has truly been Merrill the mainstay, it feels like, since day one, and certainly since 2022, when he really took a step forward. He has a 3.40 ERA in 98 starts going back to the 2022 season. He's very quietly been one of the most consistent starters in all of baseball, and I don't think people realize that. I think there's a lot of people who see Merrill Kelly's name in trade talks today with this deal happening, and they don't really have a sense of how good this guy has been for really all of his major league career.
Yeah, I think if we, most underrated starting pitcher in Major League Baseball, who else you got besides Merrill Kelly?
Yeah.
When you want to talk about, underrated can be a very funny thing to discuss, right? But basically, it's got to be a guy who is simply much, much better than everybody thinks he is. That doesn't watch him pitch every day. Merrill Kelly is that guy.
Well, if you've never bet on baseball before, it is easy with our friends over at the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Pick a guy to go yard, hammer some live odds mid-game, or just ride with your squad and hope for the best. Here's something special for first-timers, new DraftKings customers. Bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. And Jack, I know we have our weekly pick for the DraftKings Sportsbook app, and of course, this one involves another familiar name.
Well, I decided that I'm going to take a chance with Eugenio Suárez. Partially, it's penance for all the times I pooped all over him with his projections, but also he's only 5 behind the major league leader, Cal Raleigh. Cal Raleigh's a catcher. Catchers always fall off the last month or two of the season. I really don't think Cal Raleigh is going to maintain this pace into September. He's a catcher. Aaron Judge is hurt. Shohei Ohtani is dealing with a hip issue. Kyle Schwarber is only 1 ahead. So I think that there's a chance. Now, Everyone probably thinking, hey, you go up to Seattle, that's a really tough ballpark to homer in. But Chase Field is actually more difficult home run park than a lot of people think. For right-handers, it does have a 99 home run park factor, whereas Seattle has an 86. But the overall park factor for home runs is 90. This is according to StatCast for both ballparks. So with both ballparks having a fairly equal home run factor, a motivated Eugenio Suárez wanting to show what he can do, hopefully healthy all the way, and some health issues and potential wear down issues for the guys ahead of him. This is, if you like long shots, plus 1,400, this is a pretty neat little long shot bet.
There you go. You can, of course, place that over at the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code FOUL, that's code FOUL, for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY at 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 and over. Age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Well, Jack, we are back here on Snakes territory for a few final thoughts here as we close the book on this 2025 MLB trade deadline. I've spent so much time on my phone and computer in the last 48 hours. I feel like I need to not look at a device for the entire weekend or something. I don't know if anyone can relate to that. But as the dust settles here, Jack, we can maybe spend just a couple minutes talking about our big picture thoughts about what the Diamondbacks were able to accomplish here at the deadline. I guess the biggest thing that this team wanted going into this was young starting pitching. That's the thing we kept coming back to. Obviously, with Corbin Burns and a number of other pitchers out going into 2026, the D-backs have a couple of open rotation spots theoretically, and you'd love to be able to build some depth behind that as well. I don't know if I would call this a slam dunk in that regard. The D-backs did pick up 3 arms from the Texas Rangers today, which helps a whole lot, but they didn't get that one, the very hard to find young starting pitcher that you can just plug right into your rotation. We talked about a number of these guys in some of our trade deadline previews: Logan Henderson, Mick Abel, these guys who are in the top 100 who are major league ready. The D-backs were not able to check that box.
Yeah, well, big picture, there is an offseason coming. The D-backs do have a fairly deep pool of position players. And they can probably put something together there potentially to make a trade and pick up the guy that they need to help fill the rotation long term. The other point is free agency. One thing that very interesting that Mike Hazen said was he's fully aware of the failures that they've had in the free agent starting pitcher market, but he said he doesn't believe that you back away from that market because of those failures. You can't run from it.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a really interesting comment that he made. Now, I'm not encouraging him to go sign a 30-something-year-old guy with 1,200 innings on his arm for 6 years and $180 million. Don't get me wrong. But don't be surprised if they dip their toe or even their entire foot back into the free agent starting pitcher market.
They might have to. I mean, that might be the only way to fill out this rotation next year. Obviously, an easy solution there would be to just bring back Merrill Kelly, and that is something that Mike Hazen didn't talk specifics about in his presser today, but he did sort of allude to that coming up in his conversation on the phone with Merrill Kelly when the trade happened. So all signs still point to that being very possible for the D-backs to maybe come to an agreement with him over the offseason. I guess we did get a sense maybe of where that market could be, Jack, a couple days ago when the Kansas City Royals extended Seth Lugo. It was a 2-year, $46 million deal, I believe. And, Lugo and Merrill Kelly, they're not exactly the same pitcher, but they're pretty similar. Neither of those guys is going to blow you away, but they both have very deep pitch arsenals, have gotten good results as starters in recent years. And Lugo is 35 years old compared to Merrill Kelly at 36. So 2 years and $46 million. I don't know if that's spot on necessarily, but it gives us a pretty good idea of what that market might look like.
So if Zac Gallen accepts his qualifying offer for 21 plus, and Merrill signs for the Lugo deal, that's 67 to 70 million of your 70 million that you have to spend next year.
Well, I mean, but you're talking about 70 million for the 2026 season, right? Because the 46 million is split between 2 years. So it's you're really adding like 45 million to the books for 2026, which, to be fair, is still a lot of money. I mean, if they spent 45 million on, if Gallen were to accept that qualifying offer, which I don't think we can rule out, and Kelly were to sign back for that sort of a deal, that is a lot of money going back to, just bringing back those same 2 starting pitchers.
Yeah, and they still don't have a DH then unless Pavin Smith figures it out. And I think we've have some opinions there about the long-term efficacy of that particular direction. It means that you have to hit on Tyler Locklear. It means you have to get performance from Jordan Lawler at third base. There's a lot that has to go right if you end up blowing $45 million on those 2 pitchers.
Yeah, that is very fair. Well, we have the next 2 months, Jack, and then the whole offseason to discuss what the Diamondbacks might do heading into 2026. Certainly a lot of conversations to be had there in the future, but that is all we have here for this 2025 MLB trade deadline. We really appreciate all of you being here with us in the chat. Be sure to drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel. We do these big live streams for trades and whatnot, but we also cover all of the other stuff throughout the season. We're here 3 days a week while baseball is being played, so we would love to have you here as a regular consumer. And Jack is doing a great job modeling our some of our merch. You can find that at snakesterritoryshop.com. It's not only t-shirts, but it's hoodies and notebooks and all sorts of other stuff that you can find. It's a great way to support the show, and we really appreciate you doing that. If you want to follow us over on social media, we'd love to interact with you there. I am at Jesse N. Friedman. Jack is at ShoeWizard59, and our show is at Snakes Territory. And of course, Jack does a great job covering the D-backs over at Arizona Diamondbacks on SI. I'm completely blanking right now, Jack. It's si.com/MLB/Diamondbacks. I've done this a bazillion times, and for some reason, I just couldn't get there. So be sure to keep it locked over there for Jack's coverage of the team. Jack, any final thoughts here as we wrap up our thoughts on this MLB trade deadline?
It's time for a cold one.
I feel you there. I don't think you're alone in that, Jack. I think a lot of people in the chat probably feel the same way. Thank you again to all of you for being with us. We really appreciate it, and we'll be back with another episode of Snakes Territory very, very soon.